So today I am going to talk about the most overlooked new features of Dynamics GP. So here's our agenda. We're going to talk about workflow. We're going to talk about document attachment, Smart List Designer, which Sean briefly talked about. And then we're going to talk about printing the 1099 miscellaneous and NEC at year end. And, you know, like Jason talked about earlier in the presentation at the beginning, there were a lot of changes to that at year end. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So workflow in GP. Workflow is basically just automating your approval processes, you know, through using the workflow within GP. So here is a list of all the different types of transactions that we can set up workflow to allow approvals for. So payables batch approvals. So that is both invoice batches and check batches. And we can specify, hey, I want to, you know, just approve check batches or invoice batches or both. Payables transactions, purchase orders, requisitions, purchasing invoice, so that's your three-way match invoices, your receiving transactions, and you can also approve new vendors being added to the system. In the GL module, we can approve new GL accounts that get added to GP, as well as any GL journal entry batches. You can approve those as well. Receivables, we can approve sales transactions. Smart List Designer View Approval. So this is new to GP 2018. And then if you guys are using Project, we can set up approvals for expense reporting and timesheet approvals in the Project module. Finally, in Payroll, we can approve new employees that are getting added to the system or changes to the employee profile. Employee skills updates or adds, direct deposit. So if you're setting up direct deposit for an employee, we can set that up to have to route through approvals, time card approvals, and W-4 approvals. So there are lots of things that we can set up in workflow. So here's a screenshot of the workflow window in GP. You find it on the administration page in GP. And I just opened up the AP batch approvals to talk about some of the fields and options here. So you notice the drop down up at the top is purchasing, and then here are all the different purchasing workflows that we could set up. This is in our test company, Fabricam, so we have some demo workflows set up in here. So you notice AP batch approvals. Here it says both AP invoices and check batches. You notice that the box out to the upper right is active. You can set up a workflow and, you know, uncheck the box so that it's inactive. And then when you're ready to turn it on, you can just check the box to make it active, and then it will be working, fully functioning. So within the workflow, we can set up steps where, based on certain conditions, the approval will route to one or more individuals within the organization. So with workflow, approvals, batches are sent via email. So, you know, the approver would get an email saying, hey, you have a batch to approve. They would go in and approve it. So you can route, like I said, to one or multiple people, and we can have multiple steps in the approval process. Other options we have, we can send notifications for completed actions. We can allow approver to delegate tasks. We can allow the originator, the person sending the batch, to also be an approver. And then we can always require at least one approval and use a alternate final approver. So those are the options. And then down here we have some more tasks. When a task is overdue, you can take no action. Let's say somebody's on vacation. Maybe we want to escalate it to the next approver. We can do that. Or we can escalate it to, and then we, pick whoever our escalation goes to. And then finally, we can automatically reject any overdue tasks. So if somebody's on vacation and we don't have any escalation set up, we can set it to automatically reject, and that way the person would have to resubmit the workflow. So here's a screen talking, just kind of showing how to set up a condition. So in here, we're saying action is required only when the following condition is met, where batch header equals batch ID begins with invoice. So this workflow won't kick off unless the batch ID begins with invoice. Here, down at the bottom, you can also see the people that it's assigned to, GP Demo User 2 and GP Admin 2. There's an 8-hour time limit. And you could put a reminder on there as well. So again, this is where we would set up where you can add conditions to filter which transactions need to be approved. And here's the notification window, so you can add notifications with specific messages. So as the workflow is submitted, we can notify people if it's resubmitted, approved, rejected, delegated, recalled, escalated. We can notify one or multiple people of those events. All right, next option, document attachment. So again, on the administration page in GP, we can turn on document attachment by checking this box up at the top. What document attachment allows is to scan and attach documents throughout GP. So we can attach documents to the vendor, to the customer, to an employee. We can attach documents as backup to a journal entry, to the journal entry window, to the AP invoice window. So if you get, let's say a hard, an invoice comes in the mail, you can scan it into the system and attach it to the payable invoice you're entering into GP. That way you have, all the documentation all there in the system. The documents that are attached do flow with workflow. So if you do attach documents, say to a payable invoice, that can flow to the approver so that they can actually see the original invoice and then the one entered into GP. So here up at the top, we can set up a default location where all the documents get scanned and stored on the server. Then when you go in to attach the documents in GP, you would just browse out to this particular folder, pull the invoice in, and and then it's attached. So again, this is just the default location. You can grab a document from anywhere on your desktop or on the server, but some people like to set up the default. You can set the maximum file size. Here, we can allow attachments to be deleted once they are attached in GP. So when a document is attached in GP, it's stored on the SQL Server. So then you can delete it from whatever folder it's in on your server because you have it on the SQL Server. You can also set a password. If you want to allow attachments to be deleted, but you want only certain people to be able to delete them, you can set up a password. You can also allow for attachments to be added to the inquiry window. And then as well, you can add a password so only certain folks can add documents in the inquiry window, those who know the password. So here, this section, allow attachments to flow from master records to documents. So what this means is, for the first one, we are allowing attachments to flow from the customer card to, let's say, the receivables invoice card. So you can set things up to flow so that they show up throughout the system, not just on the customer card. Same thing for items, vendors, and employees. You can also, by checking this box at the bottom, send attachments in email. And that is for, like I said, the document or the workflow approvals. So here's where the document attach button, so up in the top window of most windows of GP, you're going to see this attach paperclip. If something is attached to a document, the paperclip is going to be smaller with a piece of paper. So if it looks like this, just a big paper clip, you know that nothing is attached. If there is a paper with a paper clip, that means that there is an attachment on this vendor customer journal entry. So here is the attach window. I'm on the vendor card. And you click on the attach button down at the bottom. It opens the browse window. You browse out to wherever the document is that you want to attach, and you pull it in. Once there is an attachment, you can highlight it and click the preview button, and it will open whatever attachment is up here. You notice you can have multiple attachments per vendor, per customer, per journal entry. You're not limited to just one. So before we talk about SmartList Designer, a couple of things. Some folks attach at the vendor level, they'll attach, any I-9 or not I-9, the 1099 information, whether they're taxable or non. So that's a good use of it. Like I said, some folks scan and attach invoices as they're entering payables. On the employee side, if you're using payroll in GP, you can attach W-4s and, all sorts of resumes and all sorts of documents. So just something to think about. All right, so SmartList Designer. Sean gave you a little taste of SmartList Designer. We're going to walk through a demo as well. But SmartList Designer was first introduced as a free tool in GP 2013. It basically allows you to modify existing smart lists or create new smart lists. And in GP 2018, they added password protection and, as we saw in the workflow for view approval of smart lists. So this is the example we're going to walk through. So here is a vendor list with EFT bank information. Those of you that are using EFTs in GP, you know that the EFT information is stored in a different table than the basic vendor information. And so you can't get a good smart list that shows you a vendor list with the EFT bank information. So we're actually going to walk through and create that here. All right, so here I am in GP. I'm going to go up to Smart Lists. I'm going to come down to purchasing, and I'm going to run just a vendor smart list here. From here, so I have my default vendor smart list opened. From here, I'm going to click new. And this opens, like Sean told you, the smart list designer window. So here I'm going to call this vendor EFT. So here are all the selected fields from the vendor card. I know in GP that the EFT information is under the company. Sorry, system's a little slow. All right, so here's my option, address electronic funds. So I'm going to select that. Once I do that, it adds, you notice it adds all the EFT fields into this smart list. But we're not done yet. We have to actually create a relationship between the vendor and the EFT table. So I'm going to pick address electronic funds, field name. We want to match the vendor. I'm going to do a left join. And we're matching vendor IDs. So from here, I'm going to click OK. And now you notice here is my vendor EFT smart list. Now, like Sean was saying, you can't within Smart List Designer exclude certain columns. So from here, just like any other smart list, you can go up to columns and remove some of the duplicated, like maybe let's get rid of this, this. All right. So once you get the information the way you want it, you can rename it here. And then it'll save. Also, you saw you could assign a password if you wanted to keep people from making changes to your smart list. So here, you could put a filter. I could go up and do a search if I wanted to only see vendors that have EFT information, but this will show you. So now I have a vendor list and there's my EFT information. All right, so printing 1099s and the non-employee comp. Included in GP 2016 and 2018 in the year-end service pack were the changes to the printing of the new forms. I know there was a scramble with some folks at year-end. They didn't get the year-end service pack in time. So, like Jason talked about earlier, if you're on 2016, especially this year, we need to talk about getting you guys updated to 2018 so that you can get in that modern life cycle and get updates on a regular basis going forward. So once the service pack is applied, this is what the vendor window looks like now. You notice the tax type is non-employee compensation, and then the 1099 box is non-employee compensation as well. So there's a change to the vendor card. Here is the 1099 details. So up under cards section on the purchasing window, you notice we can make adjustments here if we want to. There's a new drop down for tax type. So printing 1099s and the NEC, you can run the update, update the 1099 information in the utilities section, and it will update the vendors in the system. So there is a way, you know, if you guys are coming off an older version, to update the vendors, get everything in the right buckets so that when you print 1099s at the end of 2021, you'll be in good shape. And so here's just a screenshot of the print 1099 window that's under the routine section. You go and print. Again, there's a type. So you would pick the drop-down non-employee compensation, and it will print out your 1099s that way. So those are just a few of the enhancements in the later versions of GP that some of you guys may not be using. So, you know, reach out if workflow or, you know, document attachment or, you know, like Sean said, if you have some reporting needs, please reach out and we'll be more than happy to help.